What's going on, everybody? The Original Mako back with some more Vampire Survivor tier list content. But before we get into it, be sure you check the links down below. As always, there's a lot of stuff down there for more Mako content, more ways to be a part of the community, so I would really appreciate it. First link, you can become a member today, get access to exclusive content weekly for only $5. It helps the channel a ton, and I would really appreciate it. And the Twitch link is down there as well if you want to see me run this game live, play some other roguelikes, play some other just games in general. Check that out, and also be sure to subscribe to the channel because there is plenty of Vampire Survivor content coming straight to your domes constantly, and other content, plenty of content. Anyways, that being said, let's get into the tier list today. We've already done the passive items tier list, so now it's time to do the weapons, and there's a few more weapons. And as of the day this is being uploaded, which if you watched the first video today, this makes sense, but there was a new upgrade added, the Santa Water upgrade. So I'm actually going to move that because, well, I feel like we should talk about the weapon. Well, I'll just manually do it. We should talk about the base weapon and then its upgraded version back to back to make it a little more organized. Anyways, we got to get into this so I can get through this. I'll try to keep it brief, but still descriptive on why I'm putting weapons where I am putting them. And once again, same as we did with the item tier, we are looking at each individual weapon here in a vacuum. So the axe, I'm not going to rank it higher just because it turns into the scythe, which is sick. The birds, I'm going to rank each weapon in its own little adventure. So first off, we do have the axe, which I'm going to put in B tier. Non-upgraded weapons, well, there's a few exceptions, but regardless, this is one of the better weapons that has a legendary upgrade in its base form. I think it pushes the A tier, does decent damage, it's good at clearing enemies out early, it's got good upgrades with more projectiles, piercing, all that type of stuff. And like I said, there's a few characters that start with some iffy early game weapons. X-Dash, you got Arca, starts with the Fire Wand, which are tough early game weapons to rock with. So getting something like the Axe early, it can help do some work. Works best with like cooldown, AoE, obviously that's its upgrade item. But cooldown's a big one for the Axe, I think. The more often you're able to throw those axes, the better off you're going to be because it does start off a little slow. So that's why I'm going to put it in B tier. I'd put it higher if it was a little bit faster cooldown off the base, but it's very close to A tier in my opinion. Next up, we're going to talk about the upgraded version, the scythes. And the scythes, I got to really think about this actually. I'm going to put the scythes in S tier. I was considering A tier because of the same reason the axe is in B, and it's the cooldown. If you have Tome as a passive, that changes things and makes it definitely S tier. But once again, if we're looking at the weapon inside of a vacuum, airtight seal, nothing gets out, not even your little shaved off cooch hair is going to get out of there. I think it's very close because the base cooldown, if you don't have Tome, it takes a while for you to throw those axes out again. Mind you, with a few upgrades, a few might upgrades, and if you have spinach especially, the sides are going to one-shot everything and pierce through in a huge circle every time it happens, but it doesn't happen super often. But every run I've used the scythes, they're always top 2. Maybe top 3 if I have a crazy run damage output, but it's always super high damage output, super reliable damage. I just wish it was a little bit faster, which once again, that's one of the trade-offs of this weapon. Most weapons have a trade-off. So I'll keep it in S tier, but remember when looking at this that it is very close to A tier. And let's also remember that once again, this is opinion-based thing. Everybody has their own opinions, but this is my thoughts after a good 30 or so hours of playing. Next up, we have the Bible. the okay, this well, yeah. This one might get a little dicey. I can see you already typing your comments. I know. You already flopped your dick out on the table ready to type it up. But wait. The Bible by itself is okay, but it's not great. When you have it at level 8, it's full evolution. It's okay. It's good. Probably B tier at full evolution, but the rest of the evolutions getting up to that, it can be, if you don't have any duration, you don't have, once again, we're looking at weapons in a vacuum here. It's not doing that much damage, and it's not up all the time. So it's kind of just, yeah. It's fine. It's there. I can't wait to upgrade it. But for now, it's not doing enough, which is fine early game. But if you have just the Bible late game, I mean, with a few nice passives, it'll do work. But I just don't think it belongs in the same tier as the axes. I really don't. If I was saying what's more likely to get you through a run, non-upgraded, the Bible or the axe takes the cake there. So that's why I'm going to put the Bible in C tier. Next up, we have the upgraded version. I don't know the names by heart, but the upgraded version of the Bible is going to go A tier. Super good zoning tool. Works super well with projectile speed and projectiles increased, because if you have a ton of books spinning around you at rapid speed, very few things are going to actually penetrate that zone. So really, really good zoning weapon, which it's always good to have a zoning weapon late game. And unlike some other zoning weapons that we'll talk about later, this one actually does really good damage and is very consistent at being able to knock and push enemies away, which when you have the whole ginormous orgy of enemies at the end, it's good to be able to get off of me type of thing. So it does that. It does okay damage, not spectacular damage, not bad damage. So the upgraded Bible gets the A tier. And, next up, this is just the way the cookie crumbles, I suppose. We've got the birds. So the birds, both individual birds, are slightly different. But I am going to put them in the same tier. Both of the birds are going to be D tier. Now, once again, looking at just the birds, I mean, X-Dash has a lot wrong with him. Exodash, he really does. But starting with one of the birds is one of the biggest problems with him, because early game, the birds are not good. It's very hard to control where. It's a pattern, but hitting enemies in that pattern is super frustrating. They have a cooldown. They don't become effective until you have a large sum of enemies around, and even then, it can be hit and miss with the birds. But it is detrimental early game, absolutely detrimental, and very hard to control, especially if you don't have movement speed. Which, once again, the only character that starts with a bird is Exodash. But still, these weapons on their own, they'll put out decent damage if you get them all the way upgraded. Not the legendary evolution, but like all the way to their level 8 form. They'll do good, especially once you get a lot of enemies near the end. But it feels like a crutch to have these early game. And most of the time, the crutch lasts long enough that I think there's probably other slots that can be used for other weapons that fit in the slot way better for every build, unless you're trying to upgrade them. Upgrading them is different, but once again, we're talking about them individually. So D tier for the birds for me. Go ahead, type your comment. I've already read it and valued your opinion, but this is mine. Next up, we have the upgraded version, the Vandalier, Valinadir. Without a shadow of a doubt, it's the best weapon in the game. The hardest one to upgrade, mind you, but the best weapon in the game. The damage output is ridiculous. The fact that when you upgrade this one, you technically get a weapon slot back. The fact that this legendary weapon can upgrade to level 8. No other legendary upgrade can be upgraded further. This one can. It's the hardest legendary upgrade to get, but if you get it, your run is set. GG. So much damage output with this thing. I promise you. It almost doesn't even matter how late game you get this. It's probably going to top your DPS charts. It's probably going to be doing the most damage in the run every single time. So S tier, easy peasy for the bird, upgraded bird. Next up, I'll do all the weapons that don't have upgrades last. So I guess the next one that has an upgrade is the cross. And the cross I'm actually going to put into A tier, non-upgraded. I think it does a lot of damage. Its cooldown is very quick. It gets that damage out very fast. Super useful early game. Can do decent amount of damage late game with some upgrades. So I think the cross gets A tier. It's just a very, very solid option to take. Next up, we have the Holy Swords. The cross is upgrade, which I'm also going to put into A tier. It's not an S tier weapon, I don't think, by any stretch of the imagination. But it's good. Just like the cross, it's going to be able to pierce. It has a chance to crit, which is affected by lucky shot or by gunfire slips out there. It's affected by your luck. So it can do a lot of damage for sure. Very short cooldown. Once again, it's never going to be the top of your damage charts, most likely, but it'll do a good amount of damage and be middle of the road. But I think it's just super good with all of its, short cooldowns and pierces and whatnot. So the cross and its upgraded version, I believe, both get A tier. And bada bing, bada boom. You're vibing. Next up, we have the Fire Wand. And the Fire Wand we are going to put into C tier. The Fire Wand will have decent damage output late game. Early game, it's horrid to work with because of the long cooldown, the slow projectile speed. It's going to hit and kill a lot of things early game, but it is just painstaking to get through. And I think it deserves to be in C tier. Once again, late game, it'll have good damage output and whatnot, but I just don't think that makes up enough for the early game crutch that this weapon can be. That being said, the upgraded Fire Wand gets S tier. This is another one that will be topping your damage charts, assuming you don't have the bird. This is going to be in the top of your damage output. With a little bit of cooldown. Once again, we're looking at it in a vacuum here. But I think it's the same thing as the scythes, and probably just a better, it's more focused area of damage. The scythes do a whole circle, but the Fire Wand does a little burst of damage. But if you have some projectile ups, whatever, I keep saying if you have things, regardless of if you have things or not, the Fire Wand is nice. Does a ton of damage, will be one-shotting through most enemies, and once again, cooldown is a little bit of an issue, just like scythes, but it doesn't matter when it's doing this much damage. I think the damage output absolutely makes up for it with the upgraded Fire Wand. Normal Fire Wand, not so much. Upgraded one, 100%. And you're never going to have an upgraded weapon pre-10 minutes, so there's no early game crutches with the upgraded weapons. So S tier for me for the upgraded Fire Wand. Next up, we have the Garlic. Now, I think we're going to make an entire video on Garlic because I think it's video worthy because it's such an intriguing weapon. But I'm going to give my short synopsis here. So if I don't go into much detail, I'm sorry, but that's for another video coming TBD. Garlic, C tier. It's good early game. It's terrible late game. Nice, easy, simple, bada bang, bada boom. Upgraded Garlic, D tier. Once again, you cannot have an upgraded weapon early game. The only time you could have upgraded Garlic is late game. And I think it is D tier. So, give get ready for that video. Next up, we have the knives. Now this is another interesting weapon for me. For the knives themselves, the non-upgraded knives, I'm going to put them into C tier. Super good single target. No, I can't. With how I play the game, I can't justify. Well, with how I play the game, I have to. No, objectively, I'm gonna put it into C tier. I'm fighting myself over this one, as you can tell. Good single target damage. Early game, if you have these, bosses will be a little bit easier because they're pretty slow and you can, hit them a lot with these knives. My issue with the knives are the fact that it only fires them in the direction you are facing. If you watch me play the game, 95% of the time I am moving away from the targets I want to hit. Now, you're still going to be, hitting things just away from you, like the way you're facing, obviously. But if I'm running away from something, chances are it's a threat. So I want the knives to be hitting the things I'm running away from, the giant group of enemies, whatever it is. The knives having only single directional usage is what gets me with them. But once again, for single target damage and for if you really need to, you're fully surrounded, you really need to clear through a little path, they'll do a good job of it. And the upgraded knives I'll put in B tier. They're better than the knives, but not good enough to be an A or S, I don't think, because of the same reason. It's only one direction. Same pros and cons, pretty much. The pros, single target damage, incredible. If you need to make a little path through somewhere, the knives are a great way to do it. But like I said, for most scenarios, I'm not a huge fan of the knives for most scenarios. So, yeah, that's why they're there. Next up, we have the whip. The whip is the next one. Normal whip, I think, is C tier. It's, whatever. It's okay. It's good. It'll do some decent damage. Not a terrible early game weapon. Once again, the majority of your damage is only going to be in two directions. Your right and left, not your up and down so much. So, it kind of struggles a bit there. But it's fine. Once you get it upgraded to level 8, it'll be doing a little bit of damage up and down. And it'll do a decent bit of damage, but not, not enough to push it up into B or anything like that, that's for sure. The upgraded whip. The upgraded whip is going to go into B tier. I would consider potentially putting this into A tier if, it did just a smidge more damage, but it doesn't. It does not. So it'll be in B tier. It's really, really good if you can get it right at the 10-minute mark. If this is the first upgrade you get, that's pretty good because the life steal you get from the upgraded version, the legendary version, is really, really nice for keeping alive. For keeping you alive. It's just super nice. And yeah, I think it's a good early game one to get, but once you get to the 22, 23, 24 minute mark, this thing's not going to be doing enough damage, and the life steal's not nearly as important at that juncture of the game, hopefully, because hopefully you have your build fully set up, but it could actually end up fully saving you later in the game as well. So I think it deserves to be a B tier. It's not. It's just average. It's just average. So that's where the whip goes. Next up, we have the normal wand, which I think is this one. I don't actually know which one's. This one has to be normal. This one looks kind of cooler though, but this one has the bigger ball and the shorter shaft. Bigger balls, but a shorter shaft. You hate to see it. I'm going to say this is the normal wand. If it's not, sue me. But here we are. Normal wand, I'm actually going to put B tier. I think this is one of the better early game weapons. Obviously, automatically firing at the closest enemy is sick. Super good for clearing through bats or the little tree stumps early game, depending on the map you're playing. Once you get it all the way up to level 8, it's still doing work. It's firing real fast. It knocks stuff back, which is pretty important because since it fires the closest enemy, it'll knock the closest enemy back, which is very useful if you hadn't noticed. So I think it's a very solid B tier item, and just one of the better unupgraded items, I think, for sure. Next up, we have the upgraded axe, which is wand, which is A tier. Same exact reasoning as the normal wand, just this doesn't stop firing ever for any reason. So a lot of knockback, automatically hitting enemies the closest to you. Super useful. Not much you have to do with it. So it just very solid for a lot of runs is the wand, in my humble opinion. Next up, the last weapon that has a legendary upgrade at the current moment, the Santa Water. And Santa Water is going to be our first case of an unupgraded weapon in the the cross was too. Santa Water, I think, is just incredible. Another one of the better zoning weapons, along with the, Bible and garlic, used to keep enemies away from you, or I don't know if it's really, I guess it is technically keeping them away from you. But it does a much better job at it than if we're just talking about non-legendary weapons. Once again, we have garlic in C tier, and we have the normal Bible in C tier, which are the other two zoning options. So easily the best one, I think, non-upgraded. Once you get this thing to level 8, you're going to have, depending on your passives, you're going to have a lot of Santa Water around you at all times, which is just a super, super good damage over time effect to have. And it's just, the amount of work that Santa Water can put in is shocking, usually, once you fully see how good it is at its job. I think Santa Water is fantastic, and I'm super happy that today's upgrade in the update was Santa Water, which I am going to put the upgraded version in A tier as well. I don't think it improves it enough to put it into S tier. It does improve it. I think it's a higher A tier weapon, but I don't think it improves it enough to put it into S tier. The only other example of two weapons in the same category, like the cross and its upgrade, are also A tier. But these two, I'd say you're probably fine. You're not going to miss much, if anything, by upgrading the cross or keeping the cross. Both are fine. This one, you will definitely see a difference, but I don't think the upgrade makes it S tier. The Santa Water area getting bigger as it moves towards you very slowly is pretty cool. It's a pretty solid effect. And I've seen a lot of people that are not liking this one as much. I do, though. So I'm on the POG side. Let me know your thoughts on this if you've used it down below, please, because, yeah, I'm interested. All right, so now we get to the weapons that are not upgradable. First off, we have the bone. I'm going to put the bone into A tier. No, I'm going to put it into B tier. No, I'm going to put it into B tier. Bone's decent. It's a good weapon. It's a solid weapon. And obviously Mort starts with it, and he's a fantastic character. But just as a weapon in general, the ricocheting that it does, if you have upgraded projectiles, the amount of enemies you're going to be hitting and whatnot is just, it's great. It does decent damage. Fully upgraded, it's fine. It's good. Actually, now that more I'm thinking about it, I definitely shouldn't have been considering A tier for it. But I think it is B. It's a solid B tier weapon, and we're going to sauce it into the B category. Next up, the Clock Lancet. The Clock, the thing that freezes things. This one's a really interesting one. So, I'm going to put it into B. Well, no. We have to look at this in a vacuum, don't we? If we're looking at it in a vacuum, I'm putting it C. The freezing effect, by the time you get it to level 8, will be very potent and be happening relatively consistently. So just eliminating multiple threats at a time with a piercing, freezing laser is super good, super solid, and just not a bad choice to have. It obviously doesn't do any damage, so you're taking up an entire weapon slot with something that doesn't do damage, which is why I think I have to put it at C tier. But the caveat, the reason I was about to put it in B, is because this can be a win condition late game. The laser, to freeze things, fires in a predictable pattern, a clock pattern. So, if you know where it's firing and where it's firing next, when you have the ginormous swarm of enemies around you, assuming it's firing fast enough, like if you have some passives to help it fire faster, like the Tome, and duration increase to keep the freeze longer, you can actually freeze an entire line of enemies, sprint through that line because they can't hurt you when they're frozen, and as it keeps firing around you, keep following it by running through all the frozen enemies. It's a difficult sort of tech to do, but once you got it down, it can actually be a win condition late, regardless of if you're doing any damage or not, which is kind of cool, actually. So C tier, but has potential to be a win condition. Next up, we have the Laurel Tasha. C tier. It is really solid, honestly, the fact that it can just stop damage. But once again, this takes up an entire weapon slot with something that does not do any damage. So you're sacrificing a lot of DPS output for it. And is the risk reward worth it? I think it depends. If you end up getting like stuck with not a lot of options for your last weapon slot, and this is one of them, could be a decent one. Like I said, the reducing all damage for a bit is pretty nice, and it's fully upgraded tier. You can actually prevent a decent bit of damage relatively often. So C tier, definitely not a bad choice, but just not one of the better choices. Next up we have the Lightning Ring, S tier, easy. If you play with the Lightning Ring, you'll know that it will be another weapon that is constantly topping your damage charts. Once again, a very passive, like you don't have to control, this thing is no luck, don't have to control it at all. I guess it is slightly luck. But it'll just melt through enemies, especially once you get that bad boy leveled up. It's the reason Porta is so good, because at level 1, she also has an insane cooldown. So anyway, cooldown, super good with this weapon, and the Lightning Ring in general just hits like a absolute truck. So S tier. Next up, we have the Pentagram, which I am going to put into B tier. Pentagram is usually a pretty saucily debated one. Obviously, there's a chance that when it wipes everything off the screen, that all of the XP gems are wiped as well, which is obviously not great. But if you have this late game, super late game, all you need is like one screen wipe to maybe just reset yourself and get yourself ready for the next giant wave. At tier 8, or at level 8, I don't know I forget what the cooldown is exactly. It's still longish, but there's also a good chance you're not going to be wiping out the experience gems anymore, because as you upgrade it, the chance to wipe out the gems goes down, and just having an entire a screen wipe, I think, can be super useful. More specifically, useful in the forest than the library, in my opinion, because it's a lot more open. But I think it's decent. I think it is. I don't think it's something you should be running every run, but I don't think it's something you should always just ignore either. I think it can be a solid option. Maybe not as exciting as some of the other weapons, but in terms of just overall usefulness, B tier it is. And last, but certainly not least, we have ourselves the Rune Tracer. The S tier. It's just S tier. There's no doubt about it. These two weapons that don't even have legendary upgrades are S tier weapons. The Rune Tracer, the piercing that it does is silly. The damage output that it does is goofy. And the overall weapon itself is just a wacky little diamond full of joy, because it will be topping your damage charts as well. All of these S tier weapons will be topping your damage charts. So if you're thinking about a damage run, Lightning Ring, Rune Tracer, Fire Wand, Axe, double birds. Obviously, you'd have to do bird, and then 3 of these. Oh, wait, no, you could do bird, and then those 4. And then get something like the cross, the Santa Water upgraded or something at the end. And you could have a really solid damaging run. But these weapons up here are just so good. And just crazy good with their damage outputs. But anyways, this is it for my tier list. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts down below. I know you guys are going to have different opinions, so let me hear them in a constructive, positive way, as opposed to a why are you so stupid way. Like, I already know I'm fucking stupid, okay? You don't have to tell me. Or do at this point. I don't know. I'll just call you stupid back, I guess. Anyways, be sure to leave a comment down below and let me know what you think. But as always, thank you guys. Check the links down below. Hit the subscribe button. Plenty of content. We're getting close to 3,000 subscribers, which is actually insane. Thank you guys so much for all of the support. Hopefully you all have a wonderful rest of your day. I love each and every one of your faces, and I will catch you all in the next video.